Hello and welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and this is an episode that I'm excited for this one. Not that I'm ever excited for any episode, but this one is kind of cool because like the day we're recording this, it's the day after the 4th of July. Here at the Pathfinder office, it's really dead. There's like nobody here except for Jesse and I. Who's
silence
just
in the office.
Silence. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, it's like, oh, okay, it's like just kind of chill and just kind of hang out and, shoot the breeze kind of feel. At least that's kind of how I'm feeling today. I don't know about you, but those are the days I like to work. Is like the day after holidays is just kind of like, I don't know. There's something like calming.
Not when in the holidays on a Monday,
no,
because everyone just overloads you on the Tuesday.
Right.
But if it's like in an in-between day like this, it's perfect because most people are not working.
Yeah.
They take a vacation day, whatever, and it's just quiet.
Yeah. So the urgency
is
the
morning
there.
Or the later night when people are not really. I always kind of joke with people like I answer my email at night because if I answer during the day, everyone responds immediately, and my inbox just never will empty ever.
That makes sense. I need to start doing that.
That or the weekend.
Yeah. Because what'll happen for me is I usually reply to my emails during the day and then, they reply back to me right away, but then I don't reply back to them right away. Yeah. And then, but I have to start doing that. But anyway, I would like to welcome Dr. Jesse Erickson, the COO of Pathfinder, to Kankakee Podcast. Welcome back.
Back? I guess I was on the group effort
Yes,
episode.
on the group effort. So when we announced a little over a year ago that Pathfinder was buying Kankakee Podcast, we had Brian, Logan, Catherine, and Jesse from Pathfinder on the podcast to make the announcement. And we kind of said that during that episode that we would kind of stretch everyone's solo episodes and interviews throughout the years to come. And it's actually been a while since, I think Brian was the last one. And that
Jeff
was like,
too.
We did Jeff too, but both of them have been like a year ago since we've had like, well, I guess we've had other members of Pathfinder, but not like, I call you guys the partners, because like you all have stakes in the business, between the four of you. So I feel like, it's been a year since we've had one of the partners on the podcast, and you and Brian are the biggest ones, I would assume. Yep. I don't know where to start because you've lived so many lives. You and I have that in common to where like we've lived so many different stages, and it's like, oh yeah, that was in my past life, my past life.
Yeah, it's like 3 lives ago.
Yeah, and right now you're in the Pathfinder life, obviously, but you're born and raised in Kankakee County. I know that. Yeah, like the Bradley Bourbonnais area originally, right?
So born in Kankakee, obviously the hospitals, but raised in Bourbonnais. I was pretty much in one house. I think the first 3 years of my life I was in a different house, but through high school, my parents decided to move to a new house. Like a week after I left for college, which felt a little on purpose to me, but
that's a commonality. I feel like a lot of people do that after their kids go to college.
Now I can go to the nicer house.
Oh, they went to a nicer house.
Yes, they did.
So they moved up instead of, because usually it's the opposite. It's downsizing.
They bought land. It was a new build, and they bought land. I don't even know. I don't know how many years prior. We had it for a lot of years. Yeah. And it took that long to get it, I don't know, financially or with the builder, but to the point where we could actually move there. Yeah. So I didn't get to experience that house as a kid. Yeah. So you're jealous. I don't know if jealous is the right word, but a little like, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Raised in Bourbonnais, Bourbonnais School District, BBCHS, all that. And then I moved to U of I for college. I was there for about 2 years and decided that was not for me. that's a whole lifetime story in of itself.
I remember hearing, I've heard like bits and pieces of your whole story while being like on the controls on other podcasts and stuff like that, and just through conversations and different things. And I remember you talking about your U of I experience, because I feel like you and I have this in common too, that, like we're not like, we never really had that crazy party animal stage.
No.
So you would be like me if or I would be like you if I went to U of I, which is one of the biggest party colleges.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. Like, I mean, I had seen a lot by the time I went there, so none of it surprised me. None of it was...
Did you go there straight out of high school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It wasn't like a culture shock necessarily for me.
Yeah.
It just... I don't know. I think a weird thing that happened with me was that there was actually a lot of us from my graduating class that went there that were all close friends. And so it felt like when we were all signing on for that it was like we were going together. But by the time we got there, a pool of them had kind of gotten like some apartment stuff together, and a pool of them were at the Catholic dorms. I forget what, Newman or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. And then there was me, and I was out at the regular dorms, separate from everybody. And so they all kind of stuck and hung together somewhat even to this day. And I just started going my own path.
The odd man out.
Yeah. And it wasn't purposeful, and it wasn't like meaning. It wasn't, there's nothing that happened
right. That's
to
just
make
life.
that way. It just kind of happened that way. And so anyway, my life just changed a lot during that time. And on top of that, like my home life was starting to get kind of weird. My parents ended up getting divorced during that time, and there was some other stuff. But so I was just going through a huge transition across my entire life, home and there at the same time. And so part of it, I think, not working out there had to do with my just kind of internal change. But that said, I went for engineering there.
Okay, so that's where the engineering started.
Yeah, I went. Well, my dad. We're just going to jump around the timeline.
We're going to jump around over the place.
It's like one of those. You see one of those TV shows where it like jumps forward and back.
Yep. That's going to be one of those. Yeah. Because your dad started E2I.
Yeah.
Right when you were born, right?
1990. I was born in July, and my dad started the company in April, which seemed somewhat purposeful. Yeah. Oh crap, I have a kid coming. I have to start something. I need to make more money or something.
It is funny how that works, because I started a brand new podcast like right around the time Owen was born. So not this one, but
all the changes at once,
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up, number one, in an entrepreneurship household, which is not something that I recognized until much later in my life. But two, and more importantly for this story, an engineering household. He taught engineering in Olivet. He helped start the engineering program in Olivet many years ago with a couple other guys. And so it was just ingrained in my mind and soul for forever. Started working for my dad when I turned 15. So going into school, like engineering was it.
It was a no-brainer.
It was just it.
Yeah. And what type of engineering is it, though?
Electrical engineering was the major.
Okay.
His company does automation engineering. So we do hire electrical, mechanical, some computer, some software kind of people all together. They do, process automation for companies like CSL, Nucor we've been in, a couple others locally, food businesses and whatnot. And then he's got offices now in Indianapolis and North Carolina.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And over 30 years.
About 30 some years.
Yeah. That's a lot of work, though.
It is a lot of work.
Man.
He works hard.
Yeah.
He's always worked hard.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to U of I for engineering.
But
man, that was hell.
Was that a school like known for engineering?
U of I is one of the big ones. Okay. At the time, I don't know anymore, but at the time it was number 2 in the country for electrical. I think though, here's the one culture shock thing that just really, really hit me was, you know, at BUCHS at high school, I was like an all A student. Not getting an A was not me. I get to U of I, and it's my first engineering specific course that I'm in, ECE 110. Yeah. And, you know, it's a big room. There's probably 200 students, something like that. And they told us that we were going to be graded on a curve, which meant, you know, by the end of the quarter or semester, sorry, I think I had an 87% in the class, and that was a C minus.
Oh man.
So that was the biggest, like, oh, this isn't the same.
Yeah, that would be a
usually
big
a curve
shock
seems like something's going to help you.
I think it helps.
You know, and
I don't think it helps the people on top. I think it helps the people on the bottom.
Supposed to,
right?
But when you have apparently that many people doing better than me, like, you know, 13% from 100, but apparently there were so many of those, it actually meant that I dropped down quite a bit.
Dang.
So yeah, that was a big culture shock for me. And I stuck with it for a little while. Obviously, I was there for 2 years. That was my first semester. But I don't know. Like, just everything about that was new for me.
Yeah. So what brought you back? Did you come back home after 2 years?
Came back home.
So what'd you do? Did you just transfer? Did you drop out?
Both. I guess you would call it dropping out because I didn't have school lined up when I left. But by the next fall semester was enrolled at KCC.
Okay.
Went to KCC for a semester.
And you just weren't feeling the engineering bug, right? I mean,
no. So that did not change yet.
Okay.
For me.
You were still pursuing.
I was still pursuing engineering. There's a couple of things going on in my life, like I kind of alluded to here, at home, and you know, by the last semester at U of I that I was there, I was coming home often to help with my family. And I'm not blaming that for my schooling, but it certainly had an impact on my grades and whatnot. So I finally just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. I just can't do this anymore. And I didn't know, I wasn't giving up by any means. It just... it was kind of a double-edged sword here because the education piece was becoming very hard for me. Part of it was, I just wasn't used to studying that much, quite frankly. And so I wasn't studying that much because I didn't think I had to. And that was just killing me.
It's so funny you say that. It just makes me think of when I went from Mantino Middle School, junior high, to Bishop McNamara for high school. Yep. It was like that for me. Yeah. I didn't study at all, and then I went to Mac, and it was like way harder.
Yep.
And, yeah,
that was me going from high school to college. Like I just wasn't. It's not BUCHS's fault. Like I just never had to study.
Right.
I was a smart kid. I didn't have to work very hard in that manner. I just knew stuff or figured it out quick. So. Honestly, I never learned study skills.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that.
It's a whole subset of school, right?
It really is. That's a whole other skill.
I don't know how to do this. You know, I usually am more natural at this, and it just wasn't happening. I would say, though, that I was, meant to come back, and God was leading me back because I do think, too, besides the education piece, like, my personal life was just in shambles. Like my family was breaking apart.
Because of your family's divorce? Or your mom
not just that.
Divorce?
Not just that, but absolutely had an impact. And I felt like a former shell of myself. Like I didn't feel like who I was anymore. I didn't feel like the things that were important to me were important to me anymore. I remember they seem trivial and simple now things, but they were very meaningful at the time. Just like not responding to my very close friends that were there for me, just shutting them out, just everything. Just I was not me anymore.
Yeah.
And so half forced and half by choice, I had to get out of there.
Yeah. So you came back, you started doing classes at KCC, still pursuing that engineering degree?
So at KCC, I was basically catching up on some of the math related stuff, some of the science related gen ed stuff, just things that I could finish off. And then I enrolled in Olivet shortly after.
And was the goal were you working for your dad's company even during this time or before this time? Or?
I was coming home on some weekends and helping in the control panel shop. I did a lot of CAD work during that time, some documentation related stuff. I was working a lot less, but I think I guess some weeks were still up there, but on average 15 hours a week, something like that.
And was the goal to get that engineering degree and then just work for your dad or start your own firm, or what was...
I never thought about starting my own engineering firm, ever. Yeah. I have told him this, and I still say it. I could never have started that kind of a company by myself. E2I was built on like really high quality engineering work. And though I'm a better engineer than I think I am, is what people tell me. I wasn't going to be the engineer that sat in a cubicle and put my head down and just, did long days to do that kind of work. I just, I think I loved it, but I didn't have a passion for it, maybe. Like, I think I could be good at it. I think I have a high appreciation for engineering work. I thought, but, there were just better engineers at the company than I was ever going to be. They were just good quality guys that they loved doing that. And I was always better on the business side. I just didn't really know that till later.
Yeah. So when did you realize that then? I guess going through...
After I graduated.
Gosh, it's so funny how that happens. So yeah, because you go to KCC, but then you end up transferring to Olivet,
this is where things get... I would say there's a whole lifetime that we're skipping past here, which is fine because it wasn't necessarily all sunshine and roses.
We can get it.
It was a brutal time in my life.
Why was it so brutal?
In high school and college, early college?
Yeah.
I don't know. There were just so many things. There were just so many things that happened to me or to people around me. I was a little bit of I'll say mentally, internally, I was a little bit of a martyr, but not because I was doing anything really impactful, just because I was the kind of person that, like, if my friends were going through something hard, like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to be there, even if they don't want the help. So I remember, like, I won't name names, but there's a girl I know from high school, for instance, that got heavy into drugs, and there were a couple times I was there around when something was going on, and I had to carry her into the hospital before, just things like that. That was my life at that time. Things like that is where I was putting my mental and emotional energy.
And so you just kind of carried that with you.
Yeah, I carried it. My brother was going through a lot of things like that too at home. I saw a lot of that firsthand, some pretty rough stuff. And so, and it had to do with drugs and had to do with violence and alcohol and just all those different kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff at that time. I mean, he got in a couple car wrecks. I saw one of them. He brought some stuff home that we found and saw, including himself, just in a very bad state. And so we also had, friends of his around that were in similar positions of their life. And so I just saw a lot of that, just a lot of weird, bad, heavy stuff. And so to me at that time, again, we're talking about like, high school mind, very immature mind. I'm thinking like, this is in my life so that because I know how to deal with some of this stuff. And so now I need to go out and deal with that for everybody else, and I don't think that was necessarily bad for others. It just,
but you forgot about yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 I was not taking care of myself at all.
So,
I still joke about it, but like my breakfast in high school for the last 2 years of high school was a pack of Pop-Tarts and a Mountain Dew. And I'm not kidding. Like every day, that's what I was doing.
There's still Pop-Tarts in the Pathfinder pantry.
I still
too.
enjoy Pop-Tarts. I did try to lay off like energy drinks and I don't drink Mountain Dew at all really anymore. But so there's just a lot of that. And I carried that to college, which is part of the stuff going on at U of I. And as we know, U of I, big party school.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot more of it.
Oh, wow. Okay. And now I get it.
But the difference in high school versus college with some of that is that it's more widely accepted in college.
Yep.
And more
encouraged,
chosen. And so me trying to do some of the things for others that I did in high school did not look very well upon me by others. Like they look down on that very heavily.
Oh yeah, you're just a narc.
Yeah, I didn't turn people in. It wasn't like that. But yes, but that's the kind of thing they felt about me.
Yeah, and I feel like that time period they loved to say the word narc.
Yeah,
and just
Yeah, they just didn't want me around. Yeah, quite frankly, like, and I get it. Like I wasn't like being fun.
Mm-hmm. No.
But I felt very differently about that stuff. I did not touch a drop of alcohol until after I was married. Even this carried with me for a while, and it wasn't. There's lots of reasons for that, but that just wasn't going to be me.
Yeah.
And wow. By the time I got to college, I think too, after watching kind of some of the stuff that drugs and alcohol had done to him, maybe scared isn't the right word, but I don't want to risk it. I don't want to risk.
You were never tempted.
There was no temptation. There was that did not seem or appear fun to me. It was like, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to be out of my own state of mind. I just don't want to. Yeah.
And you probably felt pressure to be like, oh, I need to.
They wanted me to.
I need to be. Well, I'm sure they did, but you're also thinking in the back of your mind, like, I have to be the good one.
Yeah.
I
did feel that way.
I've got to be the kid that has all of his stuff together.
I did feel that way.
You know.
I was always known as the good kid growing up. One of my close friends, who's friends with me to this day, Jake Cook, I remember we were at a church retreat one time, and our youth pastor said, it was going around the circle, it was a small group, and it was telling each one of us something that she really thought was incredible about each of us. And she got to me and she says, Jesse just, he's a kid and he likes to have fun, but like he knows when to stop and to just not take it too far. And Jake Cook is sitting there and he's like, no, he just doesn't get caught like the rest of us. I will always remember that. But no, that was just me. Like I was the kid that the parents trusted, and for good or for better or worse, that just stuck with me through, past college. So
yeah. So when did you get to that point then? You're going through all of this. You graduate with your engineering degree.
I did at all of it, yeah.
And then
so here's where my next life starts.
Okay.
Like and there's parts of it, but so I went to Olivet after KCC to finish my engineering degree. And I was in my last year. Sorry, it's my junior year, I guess. I ended up being like 5 years or 4.5. But right before the summer of my last year, we got a new engineering chair at the department named Ken Johnson. And interestingly enough, so my dad had taught at Olivet, started the engineering program with some guys. He taught Ken as a student. And it's always funny because I would say, looking back, like my dad talked about Ken in a way that I felt like I was at that point. Mm. Like he wasn't the best student by any means. And, he got through and whatever, but he went on to start a company or two maybe. And he made some good money. He was extremely successful, and there's a book about him now, but it said in there that, and he said this in a lot of speeches he would give, like, I had achieved success in every measure that the world would say I needed to achieve, but I just felt like there was something more that he was missing. So he ended up leaving his company to come work for Olivet and pour back into students. He was very high on missions. Like he went on mission trips all the time. He did that in an interesting. This is where I started to really feel empowered by this. His mission trips weren't like go and hang out with kids and do vacation Bible school. There were parts of that for sure, but he wanted to take the engineering skills and knowledge and apply it to some of these third world towns, and bring them water, bring them refrigeration, bring them energy, solar, those kinds of things.
Yeah, use his talents and his knowledge.
And so I was like, hey, that's cool, because I think many of us at one time or another has looked at missions or things like that and been like, hey, it's cool that if you're a Christian, you say it's great you're bringing the gospel to these people. If you're not, you're like, what are you actually doing? Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a fair judgment, quite frankly. Like, I do think, though I believe in the gospel, I also think that showing people, or bringing them some resources that are sustainable and teaching them how to operate that after you're gone is a really powerful thing. If you can only go there and do a school thing or paint, great, do that. But if you can leave them something that impacts their lives forever, I mean, I know which one I'd rather do.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes beyond
their day-to-day life, I mean.
Yeah, no, and I think that just shows testament. He really wanted to make a lasting impact. He wanted to be remembered.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I actually would say he didn't necessarily want to be remembered. He just knew what he was setting out to accomplish. He didn't care what anyone else thought. He really didn't. And so anyway, I got to know him a lot when he first got there. I made it a point to do so, and he poured right back into me. And he changed my life. He invested in me in a hard time for me, more than any other adult. I guess I was in late college, so I was an adult now, but he was investing in me more than I felt like anyone else was. At that time, he spoke to me about a lot of things. Eventually, he told me that he was working on a project for the university where he's working with the Economic Alliance locally and talking about a space locally, old warehouse that could be used for some growth opportunities that engineering needed at Olivet, but also for more incubator startup kind of things that could fuel, startup companies like he had done, or other, invention and impactful kinds of innovation.
So entrepreneur.
It was really a mix of entrepreneurship and engineering, which in a lot of cases I call innovation.
Yeah.
Because you kind of need both.
You do,
right?
Absolutely.
Especially for physical products or manufacturing, things like that. And that was the first time I think that I really lit up about doing something with my life. I had done a lot of things with my life, many that we've skipped over here, but like,
oh, we're going to get back to that.
Okay. Just gotta jump around. But like, I felt innately passionate about it in a very different way than I ever had about anything before. And he's talking about this. I'm like, that sounds cool. That's a space that can be used to help everyone. It can help the community, the economic development, the students themselves. I was like, I'm all in. And so I told him, like, I know, I understand, like, I don't know your school, and I'm not like not tons of life experience to use, but like however I can be, I'm in.
Yeah, it just excited you. Yeah. The idea excited you, because that's probably kind of where you were at in your life too.
I was getting toward graduation, and I was like,
what am I going to do?
I mean, I always thought I'd work for my dad's company and hopefully own that someday. But yeah, it all started to come together for me at that time. Like, I was an entrepreneur, but I had never used that word before. I didn't know what that really meant.
Right.
And I know what business ownership meant, but I didn't really think about entrepreneurship in that way.
Right.
I did not think of my dad as an entrepreneur until about that time. I realized that several of the other dads from church who had been close to me were entrepreneurs themselves. Like Jake Cook's dad is one of them. Mike Gingrich was another. Funny enough, they had all worked together before.
Oh, that's funny.
Outside of church stuff,
Gingrich is MG2?
MG2A.
Right? MG2A.
And Tom Cook now owns Glady, and Jake works there.
Okay.
But my grandpa, too, who had passed away right as I was entering high school, he was a carpenter, and he kind of was his own business, too. I think he was more so like a solo operation. And then also my grandpa on my other side, my mom's side, had owned a car lot on his own property.
Oh, wow.
Near his house. And it wasn't until this time of my life that I was putting these pieces together in my head that they were a part of my DNA and had been since I was born, but never thought of it as like business ownership and entrepreneurship.
Right.
It was just the way life was for me.
Well, did you ever do when you look back on your childhood and things like that, were there instances where you pursued entrepreneurial things and that you didn't realize at the time?
Yeah, absolutely, I did. I got into a lot of things. I tried to write books for a while, which, that's somewhat different than entrepreneurship, but like I really wanted to publish.
Similar.
Like I really wanted to sell.
You're still creating something.
Yeah, you're creating something.
Yeah.
I was creating.
Yeah.
I talked about a few things in high school. I remember my senior project at all of that ended up being like a new invention. We were looking at getting a patent, all this stuff with a outside investor who came up with the idea. In early college,
what was
throughout the end of college? What was the
invention? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I can. It was right around the time that Google Glass came out.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Short-lived.
I was going to say
this investor's like, I think this can be a big thing for manufacturing. I think he was right. It was just way too early, which now we have other
because
products
that's the early 2010s like the earliest or 2010s?
Augmented reality glasses that it came out. It was just too early.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got a pair, and he wanted to make accessories for Google Glass, like a little thing that you could put on that's like a case and a light and some just different things like that. And then also in college, I started my own nonprofit locally that was really focused on helping the other nonprofits in the area. I always saw that they were constantly looking for volunteers and couldn't get the help that they needed to really do more. And so I was like, hey, I've got all these connections with students. Maybe I can create something that kind of is the avenue for these kinds of things and plugs people in, because students coming to town, like, they don't know what opportunities are available.
No.
And there's no singular, to this day, there's really no singular location or way to do that.
Not really.
Not one that's working well.
What, does that nonprofit still exist, or
No.
is it just
No, it doesn't. I did run it after college for a little while, but
you ran out of time, I'm sure.
No, not so much that. I got to a point where I wanted to use business at some point to give back more than I'm not knocking nonprofits when I say this. I just felt like no matter what I did in the nonprofit space, I was constantly clawing for resources. And I just felt like, hey, I actually might be better at business. And if I can start to make good profit and have more people behind me and employees and things, I can give back in that way and probably give back more over time.
Yeah.
So I just kind of pivoted my thinking about how to do that, because it was always about the community for me, about this community for me. But I just felt like I needed to pick a different avenue to do that in a more a quicker way and a better way.
So this is when Catalyst was born then, right? Or no?
Yeah. So I was just getting there. I
think we're up to like 9 lives, right?
9 lives, yeah. I'm like a cat. and I don't like cats very much.
No, I was going to say, you don't seem like a cat person.
I'm not. So it was my senior year, my last year of school, fall semester. Ken had told me all about this plan. I'm like thinking to myself now, like, I got to figure out a way to be a part of this. And then he did a triathlon and passed away. Just
during the triathlon?
Yep. I talked to him like Friday, maybe Thursday. It was on Saturday. He got partway through and he had a heart attack and died on the course. And as much as he changed my life when he was living, man, did he rock my world when that happened. I just sobbed. I was so upset. And to this day, I get emotional when I think about it. I have his picture in my office. He, like I said, he changed my trajectory, and I just can't ever really get over that at this point.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, without him, I don't know where I'd be. You know, it wouldn't be here, probably. So, at that time, I started my thinking. Maybe shifting isn't the right word at this point, but it got really refined. I took kind of this mantra on about living intentionally because, I mean, he was only like 45.
Oh, wow.
Something
Really
like that.
young.
His kids
Yeah.
were young. It tore me apart
Yeah.
with some of that.
Yeah. And now you really had a mission.
I really had a mission.
That point,
I
'cause
did. And
it was like it was up to you to carry.
That's exactly what happened. So here's what I found out really quickly after he passed away. Number one, he had impacted so many more lives than I ever thought, because at his funeral and whatever, it was packed. And people went up and told stories, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. His parents ended up getting a book together that I wrote a long thing about his life and his passing. It's in the book. And every time I go back and read it, I cry again. But I'm not a very emotional guy, so
No, I can.
It wrecks me.
I can attest to that.
So here, what I learned though very quickly is that this mission he had for the university in that incubator space was not something that he had shared very widely at all. And part of it was that, you know, a lot of his connections that probably he would have reached out to help pour into that were not local. They had no tie to this place other than Ken himself. Part of that was, as I learned for many years afterwards, carrying that torch was going to be an uphill battle with people and finance and whatever else to make it happen. But anyway, it wasn't long after he passed away, I marched myself over to the Economic Alliance and said, look, I know about these conversations in this building. I understand that I am not Ken.
Yeah.
But I'm here, so tell me what to do.
And where was it at that point?
The building?
The incubator space was
David Bradley, the old David Bradley farm implement building that's in Bradley.
I didn't know that's where
it's like 5
it was
stories.
being
It's
proposed.
huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That's not being proposed there anymore, though? Is
No.
it? Yeah.
No.
No.
This is. I was 23.
Yeah. That's a long. Yeah. So that's 10
years ago.
10, 11 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah. I know that's a whole nother story to get into on all the different implementations.
That was a long,
yeah,
interesting thing.
Right.
To summarize it for the purpose of this podcast, didn't work out. Olivet tried. They hired me full time. They wanted me to do it. Lots of things changed with the university and with life. The day that I found out that the project was not going, it was just done. I mean, I felt probably more depressed than I ever had. And Holly can attest, I had gotten married during this time, and she can attest I pretty much laid in bed for like 3 days. And then it stopped for me. Like the feeling sorry for myself kind of mentality about anything after that time was done for me. I, since then, have never felt sorry for myself. I have always said, I don't freaking care what obstacles get thrown at me. I'm moving forward. Like, and it happens constantly.
Oh, I see it every day here at Pathfinder. But do you think it just that you had felt sorry for yourself so many times that you were just kind of like up to the brim with it, and you're just like, I'm not doing that anymore? Or
during those few days that the project was canceled, which was about, 2 years later, I felt like I failed Ken. Was probably my biggest emotional core of that. And so I felt like I could no longer make excuses. And I realized that there was no one, not that no one was willing to help, not that no one was willing to pour into something. I just, in those moments, recognized if I want to make something happen, I can't rely on any person or organization but myself. Not because I don't want to, not because I'm not willing to have people along for whatever ride I go on here, but because no one's going to be as passionate about this as I am. No one is going to match my passion. It's not going to happen. And that's something I feel like I've learned about entrepreneurship in general. I think I've come across business owners many times, still do, who sometimes get very frustrated and upset with their employees even because they don't understand why their employees aren't pouring in the way they do. And I've had to tell them point blank, you did this.
Yes.
You started this. You will be one of the luckiest people alive if you find an employee that is going to be that for you.
It's few and far between.
It's few and far. Flip a coin. No, actually, no. 50% chance is too great. Roll like a 50-sided die, and then you have to retain them too.
Yep.
And so it just clicked with me that whatever I was going to do, like I'm just going to have to put in the grit and the time and the energy and not get upset with others. Like others are not going to be me, both in terms of my passion, my work ethic, my grit, even my knowledge base. Like I got lucky with some of the experiences I had growing up in an entrepreneurship family, even though I didn't know it. Like it honed me in a way that you can't expect anybody else to just come out of life with. You can help get them there, but most people just don't have those opportunities when they're that young. Right. They just don't.
And it sounds like to me too, one thing you realized is, which I think a lot of people don't realize this in the beginning stages too, is that especially in entrepreneurship, you're going to lose so many battles,
Oh yeah.
And you're going to have
Entrepreneurship is not a battle. It is a war.
It is right. And you're going to constantly have to, as we always say, pivot. And it sounds like that's also when you kind of realize that too, when you're like, okay, I can't be defeated every single time. I just have to keep going and trying to find the next possible solution.
Yeah.
And, and have to realize going into this possible solution that this might not work out, but that's okay because I'll just find another way.
I'll use I think maybe the easiest way to describe it in my head is a Bible parable where, the wise man that built his house on the rock versus the foolish man that built his house on the sand, right? I feel like anything in this world that we build on is sand. And that means you have to constantly keep reinforcing, maybe even pick up and move.
Yeah.
And that's just entrepreneurship. You're not going to really find, nothing is forever.
You're not going to be complacent.
Permanent.
Yeah.
Nothing. Companies that we all thought growing up would never go away ever.
Kmart
are gone. Kmart, a lot of the retail stuff that happened,
Never thought that would happen.
I mean, even Apple, who I say a lot of great things about and still do, they've hit so many rock bottom points in their history. Like it was not easy to get to where they were. And then everyone thought the iPhone was forever. And now iPhone sales are going down and they're trying to pivot to services and some other things. And it's just, nothing is forever. It just isn't. And companies that recognize that, people that recognize that, they just act differently. I think I always tout Apple, but it's a good example where like they're pivoting in a really healthy way using the resources and the strengths they have, but it looks very different than it did 10 years ago.
Oh, it definitely does.
If we all think, as for instance, in our own families and our marriages that it's going to be the same 10 years from now. We're kidding ourselves. Like, you have to keep working on it. You can't just say, the marriage has occurred and we're good forever. Till death do us part.
This is how it goes forever.
Holly and I just renewed our wedding vows last month, and we've been married for 10 years. And our life is so different now. We're in a different house where we have 2 kids. We've faced challenges we didn't think we would face. We've faced losses we didn't think we would face. And while I think the love in the marriage can be the same, the way that you handle the marriage is not. And I think that's the same of any business ownership. I think it's the same of really any friendship too. They might not be as forever as a marriage is supposed to be, but you got to keep working on it. This does not just happen, And so anyway, all that different example stuff to say. That moment in my life when Ken had passed, and then I felt like I had failed so miserably and publicly, even though I didn't have a choice in the matter. It just kind of changed how I react to things pretty permanently. I'm known for being unwavering, like in an emotional way.
Yes.
Some people like it and some people don't, but I don't allow myself to get very low, and I don't allow myself to get very high on things. Not that I don't get excited, not that I don't care, not that I'm not passionate, not that I don't get angry, but I try to maintain some observance of everything around situations. Like,
you're trying to prevent yourself from going rock bottom.
Yeah, I'm not interested in going rock bottom, but I'm also, I think too, like something that happens to a lot of people too is that their highs are so high that when
you miss something,
when you miss something, you don't see something, whatever, and then you come crashing to even normal, and it feels like a huge drop because it was.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, and so I don't put expectations out there so much on, like, I expect this to happen or everything is 100% certain, because it just isn't. And I try to look at everything from a little bit of a 100-foot view instead of just what's going on with me today.
Yeah.
And I think it's not always a positive thing about me, I don't think. But more often than not, it protects me from some things and helps me make some decisions that are more forward thinking or future thinking than just what do I need to do today.
Getting right, and getting wrapped up in the emotional piece of it.
I think that prevents a lot of people sometimes from doing things they should be doing.
Yeah. I think we've covered this in other podcasts, and I'm sure we will again. But you eventually created Catalyst. Catalyst ended up merging with Raven Spring Creative, which was Brian Prairie, and then also with Link Point Media. Both you and Brian bought that business, and then the 3 of you became Pathfinder. And since then, Pathfinder has also acquired other businesses like Converge, In Frame, Kankakee Podcast, Nana's Bakery. It's like
everyone jokes about the bakery.
The list is just getting longer and longer. But that makes up Pathfinder currently. That, in a nutshell, that's the short version. Of that.
Yeah, and I mean, to speak to that, I think a little bit, because I think it's important. I definitely think about and do business differently than many other people. Some people have asked, like, how or why are you doing everything you're doing at the pace you're doing it? And I go back to, I'm living intentionally.
And the pace, by the way, what is the pace? Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it medium?
Fast.
It's fast. Okay.
Some of it's not on purpose. It's just opportunities that have presented themselves that I did not expect.
Like Nana's.
Others are intentional, both because of different shared resource kinds of things, or just where I want to head. I mean, Pathfinder's a marketing agency primarily, but we're kind of moving towards being more business services as a whole. There are just so many entrepreneurs that need so much help beyond marketing, and that's stuff that I used to do anyway and can still do. And it's part of the lifeblood of their businesses. And so I feel like helping them in that manner helps us all long term.
And this ties actually back into the incubator space.
So my mindset is still incubation of businesses. It looks different, but
it's a lot different than it did 10 years ago.
It's running a business, or businesses, but it's all about the community at the end of the day. Like we need businesses to survive and to provide the services that we want or need. And if they're not here, if people aren't doing it, what now? I always think back to, this is widely known data that the vast majority of jobs and tax dollars for the country as a whole come from small business. It's not large business. It seems like it, but it isn't. And so, I feel very strongly about that. But besides that, I feel very strongly about the community, which is another thing we didn't actually touch on a ton. But to me, some of these businesses, it's about helping community members in different ways. Kankakee podcast was an example to me of pouring back into the community in a storytelling way, which is what Pathfinder wanted to do anyway. But also just all the different stories you get to have and share with the community from people that don't necessarily always get that platform is important to me. So Converge, I think, one of the things I saw in that, because that was the first thing we did. And everyone's like, well, that's not marketing stuff. And I'm like, I know, because a lot of these business owners need coaching. They need somebody to bounce ideas off of in a safe environment. They need a Jeff.
Yeah. And most people aren't born with those
I need
instincts.
a Jeff, he's less blunt than I am, and he listens to the things that I share with him and gives me feedback about it and how I should handle something, or how maybe I shouldn't have handled something, or just things like that. And so that's why we did that though. And Kankakee Podcast is obviously in a similar position. Nana's was a business in trouble, and it was not my specific intention to just acquire that, but it's a county-wide name. It's a community name that had been here for a long time. The original owner was widely known. And I don't know, I felt like it was important. I felt like it would be a huge loss to the community. And we lost a lot of those kinds of businesses over COVID anyway.
We did. Yeah.
And so I was like, I think we can do this. And at the end of the day, it's still just marketing, because I don't really need to convince anyone to get a cupcake. But
you do in some sort of way.
I just need to tell them how to and why they, that it's better than others.
Yeah.
Why they should pay for it, maybe, is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
But I don't have to educate anyone on it.
No, you don't have to educate someone on a cupcake. Yeah, you just have to make it look presentable. Well, and taste, But,
not all these businesses are making buku bucks in profit by any means. But we keep creating jobs or sustaining jobs in the area. Nana's is a really great example of that. We didn't let anybody go. I think it's about this. We might actually be up in employees by at least one or two. So to me, that helps the community as a whole. That, good jobs, and good businesses help to build a lot more than just money and dollars and tax dollars. They also build people and families and provide for them. And, it's mentally healthy for a lot of people when you have a good job with a boss that cares about you. And so to me, even if it don't make tons of profit, and I, some business people would disagree with me completely. I want profit, don't get me wrong. But to me, in the short term, that's way more important to me than I acquired this and I'm making, thousands of dollars in profit in a year.
So that's more of a long-term mindset, is the money will come later.
Well, of course, I would like to make money on it.
Yeah.
But I think there's two parts to long-term for me. Number one is profits. That's the real purpose of business, and hopefully giving back in both internal ways in those businesses, and then also external to community events, partnerships, needs, et cetera. I would really love quite frankly, to get to a point where Nana's could provide some free or heavily discounted things to like funerals, for instance. Because like I had a lady come in, I was there. She talked to me and she had just lost her daughter. And it was, I mean, she was making me cry. Like, it was just so sad. And she wasn't unwilling to pay. She wasn't trying to get a freebie. I just started asking some questions. But I was like, I just want to give this to her. Like, she shouldn't have to go through this.
Yeah.
No parent should ever have to lose their kid. And so there are things like that I want. But the other long-term thinking that I have, which is the way I think about everything that we do, is I'm not necessarily, when I do something like this, I'm not necessarily thinking about this. I'm thinking about this,
the big picture,
the bigger picture. And so for me, Nana's Kankakee podcast are both examples of other things that Pathfinder would like to do in the future, and how the resources those kinds of businesses provide can facilitate those things, or be a slice of that other cake, or help me build something else. It's not just about what you might see today.
Building bridges.
A bridge, right? Or a structure, or something. It's about building something. It's like, I think if people really want to understand me, it's if you see me doing, I'm not just talking about like how I make a sale or operate more of a one thing in a day kind of situation. I'm talking about if you're seeing me doing something bigger that seems to have a larger impact, like an acquisition or a new service we're offering, or just different things like that. It usually is not completely about that. It's about something else that we have in mind.
Gotcha. You learned that from Apple. And
I
Nintendo.
mean, that does help. They're very successful. Watching them should tell you some things about some successful ideas. But
well, I probably so to kind of wrap it up on talking about this, your big mission in life, since the passing of Ken, the incubator space.
Yep.
So now, like, this is all coming together for me, because ever since I arrived here at Pathfinder, I've heard things about a co-working space, an incubator space. And to me before, like, it didn't make sense, but now it's all making sense because you're telling this story and it's all coming together in my mind. So where does that stand for you today? I don't know if that's something you want to talk about or can talk about,
I can talk about it somewhat. It's not like a huge secret. I guess I would say I haven't given up the mission I always had. I think that should be becoming somewhat obvious to people over time. Some people know that very intimately, but others, like, if you think I gave up on that 10 years ago, no, I did not. I don't talk about it as much because I'm trying to build something, other things to support that. But if you think about everything that we do and everything we have done, we're all headed toward that same pivot point where we're helping the community. If we can start something like that, we're in a building that could be used for something like that. We provide services that would help companies like that, and not just marketing services, but other things. Jeff and Converge is a big part of really the mental health and his executive coaching is about helping them become good leaders. And that's something that we're going to need to do that. That's just a few examples. It's not all of them. But yeah, I guess, it's not, like I said, it's not a big mystery, but if you watch us closely enough, you'll notice that if you knew what my mission was, I'm just putting little pieces in place over time instead of, counting on somebody else to just set me up for the success of it. And again, not that it was bad, and I have no bad feelings about what happened in the past. Decisions were made that, I don't even completely understand, and I don't need to. There was other things going on. But that means that I have to set all those things up. Like, incubators are not simple things. Co-working spaces are not simple things. They require services or resources that help build those businesses that are a part of it. So for me, the mission has not changed whatsoever, but I know that I need a lot more resources to do that. effectively, long term.
So right now you're still in the building stage, right? I mean,
for now,
yeah.
I feel like we're getting pretty close, but I'm patient.
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be this calendar year necessarily. But that said, there's a lot of pieces that are public knowledge and some that aren't actually public knowledge that go into what we're doing, and it's very purposeful. And the end goal is the same. I care very much about this community, and I want to help businesses in this community. I have done a lot for businesses in this community that I wasn't paid for, and not because they refused, but because I want to see that success. Like, if we don't all do well, this can't work. If we want to get Kankakee County to a place that is different than the past 10, 20, 30 years, it takes a village. And it takes a lot of people putting in a lot of time and energy. People that came before us that are no longer here already put in a lot of those building blocks and stepping stones so that we can do some of the things we want to do. And that's continuing today. And things that I think some leaders in the community put in place now, the fruits of that labor won't be felt for 10 more years. Maybe they won't be here anymore. I don't know. But it's not this overnight thing. And so to me, what we're building, we want to build a successful business that does business outside of this community, that does lots of things for lots of businesses in lots of places, and for ourselves at some level too, of course. But we'll always have a purpose and a place in Kankakee County. Pathfinder, even if we ever got another office somewhere else, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, Kankakee is home.
It's home. We care about it. It's part of our mission. Leaving that behind is not optional.
Yeah. Well, obviously you bought Kankakee Podcast, so you definitely can't go anywhere.
Know I was rebranding it to United States Podcast.
Yeah. That way we can move anywhere in the country.
Tell any story for any reason. All encompassing.
That's the next announcement. You're just hearing
it's fake news, just so we're clear. It's not that's not something news. That's happening. So,
all right. Well, I know there's so many other stories we haven't told, but it just means that'll be for another time.
Yeah.
So, but thanks, Jesse, for everything, and keeping Kankakee Podcast afloat too. So,
no, my pleasure. You do most of the work.
Well, I do. I will say, yes, I do. I do a lot of work, man. I tell you. But still grateful to be a part of the Pathfinder conglomerate.
Yeah, so we're glad to have you.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think
no. Yeah. I think you're good for this therapy session.
For this therapy session, yeah. Oh man, that's what we should do next time I'm on. Is bring in a therapist.
Oh my gosh,
that would be a whole thing.
Oh cool. Man, that would really be a whole thing.
All right, cool. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you. That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river